family program. Research studies indicate family members play a huge role in treatment outcome and long-term sobriety. Today, we are grateful owners of Renaissance Ranch with our sons and know addiction is a family illness, and families can find healing and connection when they are willing to learn more about recovery. If you have a loved one suffering from addiction, don't wait to seek help. Join us in our online Christ-centered family education classes that are open to the public at no charge. Look for us at renaissanceranch.com.
Any Hour Services can help unclog any drain in your house, whether you have a backup, a clog, or a slow drain you want fixed. Call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, our rain and snow in April was below average, but we've totally made up for it in May. Second, lawyers for former President Trump asked for a mistrial during Stormy Daniels' testimony today at his hush money trial in New York. And third, the University of Chicago campus is the latest place police have removed a camp set up by pro-Palestinian demonstrators. 50 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and we're staying with the conversation. We kicked off the show today focused on Holocaust Remembrance Day and what has been going on this week, including this morning when President of the United States, Joe Biden, delivered an address, as well as a shorter address preceding it from Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. I thought both of the leaders did a great job in capturing the essence of the moment and getting to the heart of the message and keeping the politics at bay. I think that's always important on things like this, that you don't use these as the big political push. But it's always interesting from a strategy standpoint, and that's what I want to get into now. This is a really interesting thing that the president has done throughout his administration, sometimes I think to the chagrin of some of his consultants and strategists on the political side. And so I want to break this down just a little bit so you can listen with a little bit of a different ear in these kind of big moment speeches, because I think they really matter. I think they are ways to get a good look into how someone thinks about an issue, how they approach an issue, what their process is in working through an issue. And especially with something as big as anti-Semitism and a lot of the controversies that we've been having on our college campuses, this was an important speech for the president in particular. So I want to focus on President Biden in this communication. And so this whole strategy of giving a big framing kind of speech is often referred to as a tent pole. If you're a marketing communications expert, you know that the tent pole approach is where you take a big event, a cultural event, or an emerging trend or a kind of a moment, and then you use that to amplify specific messages and try to frame and shape a debate or frame and shape a particular issue. We see a lot of organizations do this around the Super Bowl. Very common. That's a tent pole event. And so from a marketing communication standpoint, if you're launching a new brand, if you're coming out with a new update to your iPhone or some new clothing line, using a tent pole like the Super Bowl is a good way to do that. You can frame events and conversations and media appearances and all of that to really frame it and shape it. President Biden is one who likes the tent pole approach. He's not nearly as comfortable in doing it in a press conference, trying to really shape or frame a conversation there. That's not his comfort zone or his strength. Even in the kind of the traditional presidential sit-down interview is not really his forte either. But he does have some really good moments when things get framed right, where he can deliver a really nice tentpole kind of address. And I think that's what he was trying for today as he spoke on Holocaust Remembrance Day and this entire week that's really focused on those survivors. And never again is, of course, the framing conversation that we need to get to as it relates to the Holocaust. There was a fantastic piece today in Politico. Jonathan Lemire and our friend Jennifer Haberkorn, who comes on our show often, had a great piece talking about this tentpole strategy, this rhetorical style that the president's very comfortable with. But again, a lot of the consultants who would much rather have a nice, pithy soundbite as opposed to a very long speech. Makes it a little easier. Bumper stickers come much easier from the marketing department than they do from the tentpole department and the speech department. And so I think there is some internal debate as to whether the president is best using the bully pulpit for these kinds of big tentpole speeches, or if he would be better off doing short either interviews, press conferences, and those kinds of things to make his case to the American people. Well, I think the president went big on this particular speech, and I think he delivered it well. I think it was an important message at an important time when it comes to anti-Semitism. And the message that he spoke was very clear. And there's also sort of this debate, too, that goes in if you've ever been in a speech writing process, it is messy. It's always messy. And the more people who are involved in the speech, the messier it gets, sometimes to the point that it ruins the speech. And everybody forgets what the committee or what the team is supposed to be doing for whoever the boss may be, in this case, the President of the United States. I know President Biden gets a lot of input from a lot of different places, including historians. He's got his own speech writing staff, and he likes to play into that. And yet I also think there are times where some of these speeches that the president delivers are so lofty that most Americans aren't really tuning in. And so it doesn't really fit when the president wants to be, scrappy Joe from Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's a little bit harder. We know one of the historians that he leans on regularly is John Meekum, who is really good at the lofty rhetoric. He's really good. And sometimes I think he gets out in front of the speech, and I think that gets in the way of the president, who is a little more plain-spoken, a little more direct, and he wants to have that personal connection. I think one of the things the president does incredibly well is when he is Joe Biden from Scranton, he does have that ability to connect with some personal empathy, some personal relationship. And so that's an interesting thing that I'm always watching when I'm listening to a speech from the president is, okay, who is in the room? I can usually tell which strategists were there. Was this really campaign staff driving this? Was this more the official office doing this? Was this more a John Meekum and kind of a lofty rhetoric group? Because I think he has different people for each of those different kinds of speeches that the president delivers. And so as you look at how he goes about this, you can always start to kind of peel it back a little bit and ask yourself the why questions. Well, why did he go there? Or why did he choose this example from history over that? Why did he avoid this part of the conversation? And it's just part of listening different, which I think is important. I think it's important for what the president did do today. He was very direct, very specific in terms of what is not acceptable in this country. He did mention and framed, I thought, rather well, the fact that we do believe in this essential right to debate. We do believe in this essential right to protest and all of the things that are contained within the First Amendment. The president is unequivocal. We have to protect all of those. And I thought his pivot on this was really crucial. And it's about civility. Because when we unhook and unhinge from civility, it leads towards the breakdown of civil society, and it ultimately leads to lawlessness. And the president did a great job of connecting those dots. And those are things we all should be talking about in our places of work. We should be talking about that in our communities. We should be talking about it around our kitchen table and teaching our children and our grandchildren what it means to have civility. And that we can have disagreement. We can have protests. We're really good at that in this country. The question is, do we allow that path of protest to prevent us or to actually unhinge us from civility that ultimately leads towards that breakdown and lawlessness? That's the kind of thing that we need to get to. It was interesting this morning. I was down at Utah Valley University at the Gary R. Herbert Center there. Interesting conversation about election integrity and trust. We had a conversation about trust in the media in particular, and what we all need to be talking about. And a lot of it is teaching our kids and our grandkids how to consume news and how to have civil discourse and conversation, because we're not seeing that play out, which means we're probably not teaching it well or the hard part for all of us to look in the mirror and say we're not modeling it well when it comes to these kinds of conversations in our country. And so, again, I think the president did a really nice job today. Very strong. It is a place where he is comfortable and where he does things, I think, in a way that's classy, that's powerful, that's very authentic. I think that is the president at his best. His ability to empathize with those who have lost or experienced suffering is one of his strongest suits, not just as a president of the United States, but as a human. And I think what he was ultimately leading us all towards is that humanity, that we have to get to the humanity. And we're going to stay with that part of the conversation. Coming up, my conversation with Rabbi Brad Hirschfield, who joins us from Jerusalem, was down at one of the kibbutz just miles from the Gazan border. He has an interesting perspective in that humanity and dignity. That's coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomis. KSL's top story this hour: funeral services for a Santaquin police officer who was killed in the line of duty will be held at Utah Valley University now. Sergeant Bill Hoosier died early Sunday when he was hit by a semi on I-15. Service is set for 10 a.m. on Monday. The man suspected of running him down was captured after a chase that involved several stolen vehicles. Michael Jane still in the hospital. Formal charges haven't yet been filed in his case. A family from Utah County is in mourning after the death of their 19-year-old son in a bull riding accident. Roy and Megan Anderson from Elkridge say their son Tate has wanted to be a bull rider since he was little.
He loved to make people happy.
That kid could have been a kid for life.
Tate was stepped on by a bull Saturday night and later died at Utah Valley Hospital. There's a GoFundMe set up to help the family cover expenses. You can find a link to that at ksltv.com. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. An attorney for former President Trump moved for a mistrial today during Stormy Daniels' testimony in the hush money trial. Daniels' testimony got detailed as she talked about the alleged sexual encounter with Trump. The judge denied the motion, and Daniels continued with her testimony this afternoon. Trump is accused of falsifying business records to cover up payments made to Daniels through his attorney. Your money at this moment: the Dow Jones average up on the day, but the NASDAQ down just a bit right now. And our KSL weather: looks like the rain is going to taper off and will warm up, but not too fast. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
We just want to have enough money for retirement.
And travel to visit our grandchildren.
I understand. That's why at Fisher Investments, we start by getting to know each other, so I can learn about your family, lifestyle, goals and needs, allowing us to tailor your portfolio.
What about commission-based products?
We don't sell those. We're a fiduciary, obligated to act in your best interest.
So how do your management fees work?
We have a simple management fee based on the value of your portfolio. So we do better when you do better.
We appreciate that kind of transparency.
We also check in with you regularly to keep you up to date on the markets and your portfolio.
Well, what other services do you offer?
As a client, you have access to resources on investing, financial planning, estate planning, Social Security, Medicare, and more.
Wow, sounds like Fisher Investments has everything we need.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com.
Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
You wouldn't know it, but most financial advisors are put in a box. I'm Jeff Jr. from Trajan Wealth, and I want to provide you a little insight about financial advisors. Most financial advisors have to sell what their company requires them to sell, and many advisors have to only adhere to what's called a suitability standard. A suitability standard is a limited standard of care, not requiring what's sold to be best, just suitable. Advisors with this loose standard often have limited investment and product selection. Trajan Wealth is held to a fiduciary standard, which is the highest standard of care in the advisory business. And that's just one of the many reasons we have billions of dollars under our care and attract clients from other advisors. Raise your standards today and call Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Salt Lake City PD on the scene of a couple of crashes. One in the cleanup stages at 9th West, 1400 South. Another with possible injuries, 7th South between 700 and 800 West. Attention pet parents. Tired of being a doorman for your furry friends? Say hello to Utah's own Pet Door Products. Your ticket to convenience and freedom. Visit petdoorproducts.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Scattered showers this afternoon with drier and warmer weather through the rest of the week. Highs rise into the 70s by the weekend. And right now we're at 48 degrees, mostly cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomis from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is always a good day when we have Rabbi Brad Hirschfield joining us, not from New York today, actually joining us from Israel. And Rabbi Brad, we're grateful that you spent some time very late at night over there. I know it's just the beginning of the second day that you have going 24/7 over there. This has obviously been such an interesting period. We always look at Holocaust Remembrance Day saying that what we ignore or forget, our children will not know, and what our children do not know, our grandchildren will not possess. And it seems to me that when we get to Holocaust Remembrance Day this year, it just feels a little different. Give us a sense from inside of Israel what this has been like this year.
Thank you, Boyd. Yeah, it does make a difference. I would only add one other thing. I think the things that our children do not know, our grandchildren are likely to do again. And so I think the stakes are very, very high. I think that we have to bear in mind that remembering is not a passive process. We have to choose what we remember, and we have to choose how to remember. And that feels especially powerful, especially this year, and especially even more so from Jerusalem, where I'm talking to you from tonight. And that is because it's been said a lot, October 7th was the deadliest day in Jewish history since the Holocaust, and one of the deadliest days in Jewish history ever. But because memory is a choice, we have a choice to remember in ways that simply stir our rage and our anger, and we have ways of choosing to remember that position us toward life. And so this Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, there was an incredibly poignant sense that whatever is going on, needs to go on, should no longer go on militarily. And those are all political decisions, and there are people in the country across that political spectrum. What there is absolute agreement about is that human life is sacred and that hostages need to come home. And that the sign you see all over the country is that the return of hostages is a national victory. And that is something that people share. And in many ways, that is a response to the Holocaust, which was the ultimate statement of the objectification of people. I mean, one of the most powerful images of Holocaust survivors are human beings who have been tattooed. They have literally been coded because they were turned into objects. And so the choice that I make this year is to remember that having gone through a time when people were so thoroughly objectified, and then having gone through a time when people were so savaged as they were on October 7th, that to be able to bring people home from captivity is itself a profound victory, whatever else we choose to disagree about politically and militarily.
I think that's so important, and I think it is one of the things that we've lost in all of this conversation. As you said, there's a lot of disagreement about the politics of it and the navigation of the war and geopolitical positioning and all of those things. But the hostages are the hostages, and getting back to the dignity and divinity of those individuals, to me, that may be the most important in how we choose to remember.
I think you're right. And that's why, by the way, when people say they ache over the thousands of dead on the Palestinian side, I agree. Anyone whose sense of the tragedy of the hostages can't be held alongside the tragedy of the loss of civilian life in Gaza is missing the real meaning here. You have to be able to worry about both, which is why I've regularly said to people who say there has to be an immediate ceasefire now. I said, we can agree or disagree about that. That's just add one thing. If you call for an immediate ceasefire, also call for the return of all the innocent hostages. Because that's the way on that side you can honor this dignity of life for all people. And in the same way, as I say here on the Israeli side, prioritize the return of those hostages. It may not be the only priority, but don't be apologetic about saying that is the most immediately important job to get done.
Yeah, that is the job to be done. No question about that. I know that you were down in and around Gaza today. Give us a little sense of what you heard on the ground. What are the conversations there?
I was in two places, both of which were attacked on October 7th. One of the, it's not a big city, but, north of 10,000 people, called Sderot, and it often became famous because it was the biggest town that was assaulted by rockets for the last 10 years. And then one of the kibbutzim that's even a little closer, about 3 kilometers, so about 2 miles from the Gaza border, called Kfar Aza, literally Gaza Farm. It is by turns horrible, inspiring, life-affirming, depressing. It's everything you can imagine as you go from one burnt-out house to another and then come to 3 that haven't been touched at all. And so the whole thing feels incredibly precarious, and that's also terribly unnerving. Why this house and not that house? And the only takeaway is that it was such an outpouring of indiscriminate rage that there was no military rhyme or reason to the attack. And that is what it means to confront an enemy that is driven even more by its own political goals, by a hatred of the other. And I don't care what side you're on. And hatred of your enemy, when what you're fighting against outpaces what you're fighting for, however good you think your cause is, you're already in trouble.
Yeah, I think that's so profound, and it's one that we often have to go back to, that it is not that anger and hatred for what is in front of you, but the love for what you have, for what's behind you, that causes someone to stand in those difficult spaces. As you reflect on the next piece of this journey, and I think it's a journey, all of the things you described in terms of life-affirming and inspiring, and then so precarious, the randomness of so many of those horrific acts. What is it that you're going to take forward in terms of how do we take what is a moment of remembrance and turn that into a movement of human dignity and forward sustainable movement?
So I think you've asked exactly the right question. Concretely from today, what I will take away with are the conversations with people on the ground there who talk about what it will be like in 24 to 36 months when everything is built back up, when life is returned not to what it was before, because it can't be, but to a new normal, to a life-affirming normal. And I think that's the challenge when we recover from any kind of trauma, whether it's personal or collective, to remember toward life, to remember for life, to ask how coming out of the tragedy we can position ourselves more on the side, as much as we may have to fight to get there, that net out more things are better for more people, regardless of what side they're on. If that's how we can remember and metabolize our traumas, I'm the last person to say they're worth it. But at least they leave a legacy that is more on the side of life than of death. And if you ask me what's really being fought for here, it's for that legacy.
It is for life. It is toward life. It is really getting into that space of both radical empathy and radical compassion for all of our fellow travelers, regardless of the geopolitics of it all. And that gives us a space to actually tap into that humanity and divinity that does put us in the place where we can make a difference and leave a legacy, as you've said. Rabbi Brad, before I let you go, and again, I know it's late there in Israel tonight, just give us one last thing to ponder on, to reflect on, as we all try to move forward. And I don't know that we can ever make sense of all the complexities of all of this, but give us something in simplicity that we can take along with us for the journey.
I think the simplest thing is, before we begin to ask a lot of questions about other people and their conflicts, ask who we, each of us, see as the good guy and the bad guy, and ask two simple questions. Can we dare to imagine that we, and each we thinks we're always the good guy, are not necessarily as good as we'd like to imagine? And could we imagine that they, who are the bad guy, they really are, whichever bad guy we're identifying, are not quite as bad as we'd like to imagine? Because if we can imagine how we could be a little better, and they may not be as bad as we like to imagine, that's where new solutions can emerge.
Fantastic, as always. Inspired insight there from Rabbi Brad Hirschfield from Jerusalem today. Rabbi Brad, as always, thanks for helping us get perspective to navigate the complexities and move towards the better, the higher ground. And we appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much.
So much to think about. You're going to want to go back and re-listen to that on the podcast this afternoon. Lots to think about, lots to take action on, for all of us to do. We'll be right back.
Febreze. So my home is also my office. And before I can focus, every room's gotta be clean. That means tidying up and spraying my Febreze Air Mist. Ooh, that's fresh. Febreze Air Mist scents are all high quality. They fight any weird funk, and they give my air an instant boost of freshness. So not only does my home smell good, I feel good too. After I Febreze, it's time to start my day.
Breathe happy, Febreze, la 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 la.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for less. And for a limited time, new customers receive their second month free when they sign up and use promo code MONTHFREE by May 31st. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
It's time for the KSL Give-a-thon.
We need your help raising money for sick Utah kids receiving treatment at Primary Children's Hospital.
Go to KSLkids.com and donate today.
Be a smile maker. An automatic gift each month helps save the lives of children all year long.
Sponsored by J&J Garden Center in Layton.
A big thanks to other generous sponsors, including the Utah Hyundai dealers, for their amazing support of the kids of Primary Children's.
The KSL Give-a-thon. We can't do it without you. Please give today at KSLkids.com.
Held over due to popular demand, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa this weekend only. Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
There's a lot to celebrate this month. Graduations, the end of the school year approaching, barbecues, and warm weather months ahead. Celebrate in a clean home by calling the cleaning pros at Zero-Res. Take advantage of Zero-Res's flash sale today. $25 per room with a 4-room minimum. You know Zero-Res as the zero residue carpet cleaners that don't leave behind any dirt-attracting soaps and chemicals that other carpet cleaners use. Don't risk it with the other guys or go DIY with your carpet cleaning. It will end up soaked for days and actually do more damage than good. Keep the mud outside and not under your carpets. Just check out the 3,300 raving customer reviews online with a 4.8 Google rating. Schedule today and get one room Zero-Resified, starting at just $25 with a 4-room minimum. Make sure to mention KSL. Book with ease at Zero-Res.com or call 801-288-9376. Zero-Res. Spell it backward or forward. It's the right way to clean. Zero-Res.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and if you have a drain that's clogged or backed up, after you've tried the plungers and products, the next step usually involves some kind of drain snake or cabling equipment. You see, sometimes the blockage is far enough down the line that you need special equipment that most homeowners just don't have. That's where the Drains Department at Any Hour Services can help. A drain snake can clear most blockages and get the water flowing again, and clearing blocked drains is what our Drains Department does day in and day out. So if you're a homeowner with a drain line that's clogged or backed up and you'd like one of our drain technicians to come and snake the line for you, it's only $29. Yep, you heard that right. Any Hour Services will snake any drain line with normal access for only $29. Sinks, showers, tubs, toilets, floor drains, laundry drains, even that sewer main line that connects to the city. We'll snake any line for just $29. For help with your drain issues, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7700. You can Google Any Hour Services. You can even schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Enjoy the 20th annual Soldier Hollow Sheepdog Classic, presented by Purina Pro Plan and sponsored by Powder River and IFA Country Stores. Family fun not to miss. Visit SoldierHollowClassic.com.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, funeral services for Sergeant Bill Hoosier have been set for Monday at Utah Valley University. Second, a family from Elk Ridge is mourning the loss of their son, who was a competitive bull rider. Third, the judge in former President Trump's hush money trial denied a motion for a mistrial during Stormy Daniels' testimony today. 48 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It is great to be with you today, as it always is. I am Boyd Matheson, and as we round out hour number 1 of the program, always a good day to have Jay Evenson, Deseret News opinion editor and a longtime journalist here in the state of Utah. And, of course, we're marching our way towards a late June primary coming up on June the 25th. And there's some interesting races, of course, some important races coming up. And some have begged the question of, what if you have so many candidates? Does it really reflect the will of the people? For example, if you have 5 candidates, someone could be the nominee with 25% of the vote plus 1. And Jay, you've taken a deep dive look at all of this over the years. This is one of those that I was very concerned about starting a decade ago when we started having these, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in a primary, because to me, in the end, that doesn't ultimately say this is what the voters wanted.
It's interesting. It's been 10 years now since we started the 2-track system of getting on the ballot. You can get on either through your party convention or by collecting enough signatures on a petition. And we knew back then that would probably lead to this type of situation. And we've had Well, 4 years ago, Governor Cox survived the primary with, I believe, 36%, and John Huntsman Jr. had 34%. And so this has happened before. I used to hear more talk at the legislature about trying to fix this, trying to come up with a runoff. But interestingly, this time we have 5 Republican candidates in the primary for 3rd District congressional seat. We have 4 Republicans running for Mitt Romney's Senate seat that he's vacating. So you could, and you said it perfectly, you could have a winner in the 20th percentile. The question is, how much of a percent do you need to get of the vote in order to be considered legitimate? And Americans have had this problem from the beginning, and we seem to be okay with it. I mean, let's go back and look. 19 of our presidents were elected with less than 50% of the vote. Abraham Lincoln had 39.62% of the vote in his first run for president.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone wants to go back and have a runoff there.
Have a runoff, no. I think that one worked out okay. I think we may have dodged a bullet on that one. So as you look at how we go about this, obviously when you start saying runoff, I think the first thing that comes up at the legislature is dollars and cents. To do a runoff is just one more expense, to do one more voting day around the state. I know you've explored some other states that are looking at some interesting ways to maybe get there, and can we get to that majority?
Wisconsin has been discussing what they call the Final Five. And so they would have what we call a jungle primary. A jungle primary means anybody from any party can sign up and run in the same race. And so in Wisconsin, the top 5 finishers of that primary would go on to a runoff election, and they would use ranked choice voting in the runoff. And if you're familiar with ranked choice, you begin, if no one has 50% of the vote, you begin to eliminate the last place voters. Everyone gets to choose to rank the candidates in their order of preference. And so you begin to distribute second place votes to whoever's left. It's actually less complicated than I'm trying to explain right now.
Yeah, but that is the challenge of ranked choices. But just think of it that way. Just rank each of those in order, and that's how the votes will tally up.
Right. Now in Utah, the legislature used to be all for ranked choice voting, and we have a pilot system that's still in place for municipal elections. But Republicans have begun to turn on that option. Sarah Palin lost her election because of ranked choice voting, because of second place votes. And so I doubt seriously that that's going to happen here. Some other considerations. You talked about the cost of a runoff. You can never really replicate the original election in a runoff, and runoffs tend to have a lower turnout than the original election. The other thing is, you mentioned June 25th is our primary election. When would the runoff be? Would the runoff be in late July, early August? Well, a lot of people are on vacation during that time, and that would have an effect too. So there are a lot of considerations.
Yeah, and these runoffs often get really interesting. We may remember back just a couple of years ago when you had the runoff in two Georgia Senate races.
Yes.
That ultimately determined the balance of power in the United States Senate. And those didn't get decided until January. So it put everything back a little bit. Louisiana is very famous for their runoffs that usually end up sometime in December, right before the holidays. And again, as you described it, Jay, those numbers always go down in the runoff. And so is that giving us a better look in terms of what the will of the people actually is?
Candidates are very good at learning how to strategize for whatever rules you put in place. And so, yes, there will be different ways that you can win each of those scenarios, and they will try to capitalize on that. And ultimately, it always comes down to getting out the vote of your base and making sure they're there on Election Day.
Yeah, and up to each one of us to make sure that we show up and actually cast that vote, whether it is a June 25th, that's just a reminder, folks, June 25th primary here in the state of Utah. It is our job to be informed and to show up and to use that most sacred of rights, our right to cast a ballot here in the United States of America. Jay, as we round this out, anything else on your radar as it relates to how this plays out, especially as you look towards Utah's June 25th primary?
Well, I kind of want to make a point here that I think is important. The fact that we have 5 candidates for the 3rd District, the fact that we have 4 candidates for the Senate in the Republican Party, this is a sign that democracy is healthy in Utah. And I think we need to step back and think about that a little bit. We just went through a really raucous convention a couple of weeks ago, and there's been a lot of talk about that. But the flip side of that is that people really care. They care about politics. They care about running. They care about participating and doing something to make things better in our society. I think we need to celebrate that.
Yeah, absolutely. We do need to celebrate that, and it is something that I think we do incredibly well here in the state of Utah. We can complain and we can bicker and we can debate and do all of those things, and in the end, I think we still show the nation what it looks like to really lean in and actually engage and be part of a community. I think that's ultimately where we have to have the focus for sure. Jay Evenson, as always, great thinking, great writing as the opinion editor at the Deseret News. You can check out his piece on Do We Need a Runoff at Deseret.com. Well, that wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top of the hour news, but don't go anywhere. We're actually going to talk a little bit more in hour number 2 about the political parties and how both of the major parties seem to be a little hollowed out and what that might mean for the future of our constitutional republic. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour: funeral services for a Santaquin police officer who was killed in the line of duty are planned for this coming Monday at 10 a.m. at Utah Valley University. Sergeant Bill Hoosier died early Sunday when he was hit by a semi on I-15. The man suspected of running him down was captured after a chase that involved several stolen vehicles through a number of different communities. Michael Jane's still in the hospital as of this morning. Formal charges haven't yet been filed in that case. We're hearing from a high school student in a law enforcement internship program that was taught by Sergeant Hoosier. Spencer Peterson says his death hit him like a freight train.
We're all going to miss him. You know, the community for sure has taken a hit. He was just one of the best men that I've ever met.
Spencer tells KSL TV because of Hoosier, he's decided to pursue a career in law enforcement. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. House Speaker Mike Johnson has been meeting with Republican colleagues who have been trying to push him out of the speakership. Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massey accuse the Speaker of putting the wishes of Democrats above his own party. They want him to stop sending military aid to Ukraine, among other things. Johnson says it's not a negotiation. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day about 31 points. The NASDAQ, though, down by about 16. And our KSL weather looks like we're going to dry out now over the next several days. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
When you think of Utah's homeless, who do you see? They are people with names and faces, and many are in dire circumstances. They are men and women, and sometimes children. Many are living on the street, in a car, or in a shelter. Some choose to be homeless. Most do not. Many experience the challenges of addiction or mental illness. All are vulnerable. Homelessness is a crisis, one that affects us all. Utah is building a coalition of community leaders and concerned citizens united to end the plight of homelessness. Homelessness should not mean hopelessness. Learn more at projecthumandignity.org. A message from Utah Impact Partnership.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
It's springtime in the Rockies, and it's time to apply Revive Organic Soil Treatment. A Revive treatment with fertilization, aeration, and good watering is the key to building stronger roots for a healthy, lush green lawn. Revive fertilizes and moves water and nutrients deeper into the soil. Take advantage of spring storms with an application of Revive now. Protect yourself from drought later this summer and skyrocketing water costs. With Revive, if you water 2 times a week, it's like watering 4. Apply Revive Organic Soil Treatment today. It works.
Hi, this is Doug Wright. It's an important time of year. A very special event is coming up, and you do not want to be found wanting on Mother's Day. Think of all the wonderful things those special women in your life do for you. It's time for you to take her to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And of course, there are 2 choices. There's Hotel Park City, and there's downtown Salt Lake City at 275 Southwest Temple. Mother's Day at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse is something extra special, so make sure you have your reservations now. And of course, a gift card is an ideal way to show your appreciation for dear old mom, that special lady in your life, on Mother's Day. And let's talk about the food for just a moment. Oh my goodness, the steaks are incredible. The fish is remarkable, and other dishes as well, the desserts and so much more. It's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
An emergency can happen any second. Here's a few seconds to think about where you'd go. When you need medical care fast, the closest emergency room is a smart thing to know. Common Spirit Health ERs are your direct path between feeling scared or uncomfortable and feeling better. Find emergency care in your neighborhood at mountain.commonspirit.org.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Lane closures in Utah County, southbound I-15 approaching 4th South in Springville. Those right lanes are blocked, and that's backing traffic. In Salt Lake County, a little bit of heavy and slow traffic westbound on I-80 between the West Belt and Bangerter Highway. Celebrate spring in a clean home. Call Zero Res and get 1 room cleaned starting at just $25 with a 4-room minimum. Visit ZeroRes.com and book your appointment today. Zero Res. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Scattered showers this afternoon with drier and warmer weather through the rest of the week. Highs rise into the 70s by the weekend. Right now, 50 degrees, mostly cloudy skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, if you look at the headlines, it always appears that the 2 major political parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, are all powerful, that they are this big political industrial complex. But what if beyond the headlines, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party were really just political Potemkin villages? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, why it does seem like the parties are the big, powerful, omnipresent thing, if you take a look underneath the headline and maybe under the hood just a little bit, there might be a whole lot of hollowing out going on, and we want to dig into that and figure out what's really going on. A fantastic piece in Politico. Ian Ward is a reporter at Politico, and it gets into this whole idea of what do the parties' status really look like underneath the hood and behind the Potemkin village, so to speak. And Ian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks very much for having me.
So you start out your piece in Politico talking about this hollow parties that we seem to have now, but give us kind of the baseline in terms of what perception is, what the headlines are telling us about the parties, and what you've discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. So this isn't actually my hypothesis. This is the hypothesis of 2 political scientists named Sam Rosenfeld. He's at Colgate University, and Daniel Schlossman. He's at Johns Hopkins University, and they've just published a new book. It's actually out today called Hollow Parties, The Many Pasts and Disordered Present of American Political Parties, that advances this thesis basically that the parties are shaped by a sort of paradox, that they appear to be everywhere. They shape political discourse, they're hosting debates and conventions and so on, but as you said, once you open the hood, the parties are actually empty. They're not doing the sort of things that historically political parties have done very well, like, organize ideological discipline or build effective electoral coalitions. So there's this kind of paradox. The parties appear to be everywhere. They're not doing much. So the authors call this hollowness, like a shell. They're strong on the outside, but actually kind of empty on the inside.
Yeah, and it seems to me as you go down really the premise of the book, which I think is going to be a great read, that it does seem that there's so much, obviously we've seen with the Republicans and their own infighting has made them ineffective in actually doing the governing portion of the program. The Democrats seem to be a little hollow because they seem to be chasing all kinds of things rather than a real focus strategy. What else did you find as you kind of dug into this hypothesis and what's actually going on in the parties?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just what's happened in the past couple months or so, you see Republicans ousting a speaker. Going back even further, going 15 rounds to elect a speaker, subsequently ousting that speaker, having a big party fight over who should replace that speaker, and now with the debate over U.S. funding for the war in Ukraine and debate about the border, the Republican Party being unable to form any sort of active coalition in the House to advance its own agenda. On the Democratic side, looking back over Joe Biden's tenure, you saw an enormous amount of debate over what should be in signature pieces of legislation like the Inflation Reduction Act. And the point the authors make on the Democratic side is there was no one really orchestrating this debate, right? I mean, the White House clearly had a hand in it, had its own priorities, and Chuck Schumer in the Senate had his own priorities, but it was unclear who was really calling the shots. And in a political atmosphere with a stronger Democratic Party, you would have a sort of singular figure who told everyone to get in line and support the party's priorities, but that doesn't really happen. There's that sort of famous line that Republicans fall in love and Democrats fall in line, right? And
Right.
we've sort of seen that inverted now. We almost see Democrats falling in line and Republicans falling in love. The other way around. But yeah, you get the point.
And that is what we're seeing, and it is a real interesting flip of the coin there in terms of how that's playing out. And I think one of the things that I found really fascinating in your discussion with the authors and the way you framed this conversation in Politico was the fact that so much has changed over the years in terms of these roles. The things that parties used to do really well seem to have gone by the board. The alignment thing, the lockstepness, I guess, has sort of gone the way. And also part of that has come with the rise, obviously, of social media, but also the rise of lobbyists, you pointed out. Dig into that for us a little bit.
Yeah, the authors' route has changed in the 1970s when you start to see the rise of what they call the para-party blob, which is the sort of ecosystem of organizations and political action committees that form sort of surrounding the traditional political parties, but that aren't formally affiliated with the political parties. And their explanation for why the para-party blob takes off in the 70s is that you have these changes in campaign finance law, sort of most famously a Supreme Court case, Buckley versus Valeo from 1976, that limited direct donations to political candidates, right? And so what that incentivized was the creation of sort of single interest groups and PACs, and subsequently, super PACs in the post-Citizens United era that have deep pockets, lots of money, are very well organized, but that aren't tapped into the traditional party infrastructure. Social media has now, of course, multiplied this by 1,000. You can have members who have no formal connection to the party itself, but who can go on Twitter and, social media and fundraise on their own, which is, just kind of amplified the power of this para-party blob. So it's partly changes in campaign finance law. It's partly a function of polarization, right? In the pre-1970s era, you had parties that had a good amount of internal political disagreement, right? And the party's role was to sort of balance that disagreement and have all of its partisans marching in the same direction. You know, as partisanship gets worse throughout the 60s into the present, what you see are the parties serving less of a function of sort of ideological regulation, and ultimately, that leads to their hollowing out, to use the author's phrase.
Yeah, and you do. You get that hollowed out, and where every member can immediately go to social media and, as you said, immediately raise money on whatever just happened. Of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the second the vote was taken on the aid packages just recently, I think it was 37 seconds between the time the vote closed and when I got a fundraising email. Same thing on the Democratic side. And so it does seem to be much more independent that way and less loyalty. So as you move it all forward, Ian, give us just one last quick thought in terms of what are you watching for moving forward? Do they continue to hollow out to where they start to fracture and we maybe see the rise of some of those other parties? Or are they so entrenched in our psyche that even though they're hollow, we'll keep propping them up?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably the latter option. I mean, you've seen time and time again the rise and very fast failure of third parties. The American electoral system is not set up to support third parties for various structural reasons. So I'm not sure you'll see a serious challenge to the party duopoly, as it's called. But, something to keep an eye on is the degree to which a figure like Donald Trump can take over the Republican Party sort of lock, stock, and barrel, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the Republican Party has, in effect, become an extension of Trump himself. I mean, what is the party's identity outside of its dedication to the former president? Which would not have happened in necessarily an era where the parties were stronger. Yeah. So the degree to which Trump can consolidate his control of the Republican Party is a pretty good barometer of the party's weaknesses.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. And it was interesting, too, the fact that there were some of the same complaints against President Obama in his re-election campaign, that he really centralized control of the Democratic Party. And while it was good, they won and won big and all of that, but it wasn't good for the long-term strategy in terms of the party itself when it becomes so centric on a single party. Great writing, great perspective, and thanks so much for joining us today. Again, you can check out that piece at Politico.com. Thanks again.
Yep, thanks very much.
All right, a lot to think about there, a lot to process in the hollowing out of the parties. I think they are Potemkin villages. I mean, they look good on the outside, but there's nothing on the inside. And a lot of that is self-hollowing out because it's become less and less about principles and public policy, and it's become much more about fundraising and political power. And you can prop up a party and make it look and feel big and strong and powerful, and you need to follow. But if you check under the hood, if there's nothing really there, there's actually nothing to follow. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
So are you willing to do something today that will change every tomorrow for the rest of your life? For me, the one thing was when I started my SOTA weight loss journey. SOTA weight loss, SOTA, stands for state-of-the-art weight loss because it is state-of-the-art. It's really simple. You have your own nutritionist to help you break through those bad habits, poor choices, and really build a better version of you. There's no fads, there's no potions or lotions or counting. It's all based on science. I let go of 37 pounds in just 90 days. I am 2.5 years into my journey, and I'm still 37 pounds down, feeling better than ever. The results don't lie. The difference will surprise you. As always, when it comes to your SOTA weight loss journey, there's no time to lose. There's only time to win. So start winning today. Your healthy tomorrow starts today. Make the decision today that will change every day for the rest of your life. Check it out at sotaweightloss.com, SOTAweightloss.com.
When a Utah police officer leaves home each morning, there are no guarantees what they'll see and the dangers to their lives and livelihoods. This week, an officer left home like any other day and didn't return. KSL will offer complete coverage as Officer Bill Hoosier's life is memorialized in the line of duty this week on KSL News Radio.
Are you stressing about your IRS tax problems? Have you received notices from the IRS threatening to garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, or seize your property? You need an ally. Allies Tax Relief has tax attorneys and enrolled agents that are ready to fight for you. They have saved millions for taxpayers just like you. Allies Tax Relief can help put a stop to IRS collections and, most importantly, negotiate your tax debt. Here's Brenda, a happy client of Allies Tax Relief.
I owed the IRS around $57,000, and they're about to start garnishing my paychecks. I heard a commercial on the radio about Allies Tax Relief, so I thought I'd give them a call. After a day, they were able to at least stop the garnishments, and after a few months of negotiations, I walked away owing the IRS only $301.
If you owe the IRS, call Allies Tax Relief right now for your free consultation. Call 800-230-5174. 800-230-5174. That's 800-230-5174.
We had a company propose a power line route to come right down through the center of town with 160-foot high voltage power lines.
A resident of our community reached out to Celeste and just asked for a statement, and she did much better than that. She actually came down to our very small town and met with us.
And we really appreciate Celeste and everything that she did for the town of Leamington.
Celeste showed up for me.
She'll show up for you.
And she shows up for Utah.
Paid for by Celeste for Congress.
At Lowe's, save big every day when you buy in bulk. Save 10% when you buy 68 or more OSB sheathing. Plus, get an extra 5% off every day on eligible purchases when you use your Lowe's business credit card. Get low prices on the materials you need today because Lowe's knows pros. Selection varies by location. While supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See sales associate for details. 5% offer subject to credit approval. Exclusions and terms apply. See store at lowes.com/credit for details. U.S. only.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for less. And for a limited time, new customers receive their second month free when they sign up and use promo code MONTHFREE by May 31st. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. As we look back at the week and as we look back at all the things that have been going on college campuses, of course, the questions around free speech, peaceful protest, what that is and isn't, and how do we actually create an environment where we can make sure we are protecting all of those things. It requires a different kind of focus and look and a lot of stepping up, I think, in terms of our institutions of higher education. In order to do that, good friend of the show, J.D. Tuccilli, of course, current contributing editor at Reason, Reason.com, really laid out some nice framing principles in terms of how we need to get to all of this. And J.D., welcome back to the show. And first, just kind of give us your assessment, kind of getting towards the end of this week. And a lot of the big things have, at least we hope, have played out and are done. But give us your sense in terms of what you've witnessed and seen, and then let's start talking about what's the path forward.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've watched chaos on a lot of college campuses in the last couple of weeks, especially at the elite colleges. I mean, protests are one thing. Some of them have turned violent. Some of them have turned hateful. You've had a lot of occupation of college grounds, which are, in many cases, private space, or they're supposed to be shared space, even if it's at a public university where everyone's supposed to have access, not just those that represent one group. And a big problem with this is that colleges and universities over the last decade or so have been absolutely terrible environments in too many cases for open discourse and free speech. They've favored some viewpoints, they've suppressed some others, and they've really kind of muddled the ground, you know, in terms of what are the boundaries of debate, what are the boundaries of discussion, what can you do and what can you not do. And we've seen that played out, especially over the last week or two, with these protests that have, in some cases, gone way too far, turned violence, violated rights, and in other cases been suppressed by police even when they're acting within constitutional boundaries. And that's why we really need to get back to basic first principles when it comes to free speech.
Yeah, and so let's dig into that, because I do think part of it is educating the students, part of it is educating the faculty and the administrators, as well as law enforcement and, out into the community and so on. And so let's kind of walk back through, how should we be going about this in terms of those first principles? That's always where we begin, and the fact that they are compatible principles, that you can have free speech, you can have that right to assemble, and you can do it in a peaceful way. And so how do we need to start training and teaching the way we engage in those kinds of conversations, especially on campus?
The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression has been really solid and consistent throughout this, pointing out it's now a general free speech organization. It started off as one for college campuses before broadening its scope. And it points out that even vile speech, so long as it stays clear of true threats and harassment of specific individuals, but even harmful, hateful, and offensive speech is protected by the First Amendment. So if you take offense at something someone else is saying, that doesn't mean that what's being said is impermissible. It means that you've taken offense. They might be bad people. They might be wrong, but they have a right to express themselves. But they don't have the right to engage in intimidation, incitement, discriminatory harassment, let alone explicit violence. They don't have the right to occupy private property. And if you don't draw these lines, if you don't say up to this point and no further, and on the other side of this point, we will not put up with that, then you really muddy the ground as to what is free speech, what is allowed, and where does it go too far. But these principles have been well established in law. One of the best expressions of them came out in 2014 from the University of Chicago, the Chicago Principles, when a lot of this nonsense really was starting to take off, and academics who value free speech, and I know that it's a dwindling number, but those who really still hold to the principles of the First Amendment put forward and restated the old rules of free speech, where they pointed out in the Chicago Principles that it is not the proper role of the university, or for that matter, society, to attempt to shield individuals from ideas and opinions they find unwelcome, disagreeable, or even deeply offensive. And I'm quoting here. But the university may restrict expression that violates the law, that falsely defames a specific individual, that constitutes a genuine threat or harassment, that unjustifiably invades substantial privacy or confidentiality interests, or that is otherwise directly incompatible with the functioning of the university. And, of course, violence falls in there in the forbidden category, too. These are clear principles. They have been stated and restated, but they have not been consistently applied. Mm-hmm. And we probably could have avoided a lot of this current chaos if they had been applied, if they had been enforced, if rights had been protected across the board for everybody involved.
Yeah, I think that, and those principles are those are all rock solid things. I think that that is the right place to begin. And again, it's not just the putting them down on paper; it's then making sure they're lived and breathed and enforced and upheld in all the situations across the university or across the community, for that matter. That if we get to that space, then we can get to that different kind of conversation. And I think that's an important thing. It's the looking the other way of it, or many of those, and you pointed this out in your piece, J.D., just talking about some of these elite schools, many of these Ivy League schools that really have just turned the other way, and it's starting to have a bit of a backlash in terms of the rest of society. You noted even some hiring decisions that are starting to get skewed a little bit away from Ivy Leagues because of the kinds of things that are being reported out.
This might be a bit of solace for those who are deeply offended by a lot of the speech, and understandably so. That's going on campus, especially the explicit anti-Semitism of some of these protests, is that it may be protected under law, but that doesn't mean you cannot react to it in other ways, certainly by, say, exercising your own free association rights. Forbes magazine surveyed employers, those who make hiring decisions, and they found out that 33% of those making hiring decisions said they are less likely to hire Ivy League and other elite college graduates today than they were 5 years ago. Only 7% said they are more likely to hire them. So, the graduates at Columbia and of NYU and a lot of these schools where you're seeing the worst of these protests, especially the ones that are so nasty and out of control, chances are they're going to face a very unfavorable hiring market when they get out there. So saying offensive things might be legally protected, but it carries its own penalty in many cases.
Yeah, and that's often the fascinating part of all of this. J.D. Tuccille, always great insight, great writing, and this is one that we really have to get to. And again, as we get past some of these bigger things on these campuses, hopefully things are settling down, and hopefully we can make a shift that we're actually focusing on the peaceful protesters, those who are living up to this kind of higher standard and ideal. We're not seeing them 24/7 on the news cycle. We're not seeing them on all the social media posts. But that's what we got to get to. We should stop rewarding the bad behavior. Let's reward the good behavior. We just might get more of it. JD, thanks so much for joining us today, as always.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, that's JD Tuccille, current contributing editor at Reason, Reason.com. You can check out his piece for Peaceful Campus Protests. Colleges need free speech principles, and then they need to uphold them so that there's more clarity than confusion. We'll step aside for bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next.
It's 2:29 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomis. KSL's top story this hour. Emergency managers in Utah are on the lookout for any potential mudslides, especially in areas where wildfires have burned through. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobe reports.
With all the recent rain, the Utah Division of Emergency Management has their eyes on everything from soil moisture to reservoir levels. Unlike last year, we haven't seen any homes lost this year to landslides, but Wade Matthews with the division says it's hard to predict, so they're just watching everywhere to be prepared, and he recommends we all do the same.
Matthews says they're also watching the Jordan River closely right now since it's running very high. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Even as Israel moves forces into Rafah, where more than 1 million people have taken refuge, the United States says the main components for a pier on the Mediterranean coast are being put in place. The U.S. military has completed the offshore construction of the pier, which will be used to bring large amounts of aid into Gaza without the need to pass through Israel or Egypt. Your money at this moment? The Dow Jones average closing trading today up 31 points. The NASDAQ down 16. The S&P 500 down 6. And our KSL weather looks like things will dry out for the next couple of days. KSL News Time, 2:30.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the nines, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Hey, have you saved more than $200,000 in an IRA or 401k? You may not realize it now, but you've got a big problem on your hands. And that problem is taxes. Because if you don't take advantage of some tax planning strategies now, Uncle Sam could take a big chunk of your hard-earned retirement savings. Learn how you could reduce the taxes on your IRA and 401k with a free retirement tax savings analysis. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions. If you've saved more than $200,000, schedule your free tax strategy session now by calling 801-896-9622. Discover the tax planning strategies that could dramatically reduce your taxes in retirement. Call 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
My son loves to fly kites, but my active psoriatic arthritis can sometimes hold me back. Now with Skyrizi to treat my skin and joints, I'm ready to go. Skyrizi, risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults, helps with less joint pain, stiffness, swelling, and fatigue. For those who also have plaque psoriasis, 90% clearer skin is possible with just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
With Skyrizi, there's nothing like clearer skin and better movement, and that means everything. Ask Ask your doctor about Skyrizi today and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKY-RIZZI to learn more.
Guys, are you ready to give up because you think you've tried everything and you're still dealing with loss of energy, poor sleep, weight gain, and even ED? Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City has local medical providers that offer low T and ED treatments customized to each patient's unique physical makeup. By working with a specialized compounding lab, personalized treatments are guaranteed, even when generic pills and supplements haven't worked. It all starts with your free comprehensive exam and consultation. Availability is limited. Book today, and for this month only, Revive offers qualified patients a free 1-month supply of personalized ED medication, plus a free ED treatment producing immediate results. The experts at Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City will work to provide the right treatment for you so you can show up as the best you in all aspects of your life. Call 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or send them a private message at revivemenshealth.com.
Dave and Debbie. I want our listeners to feel like they have an advocate, that they have somebody that's going to fight for them, challenge the status quo or the pithy soundbite. We have a unique job where we have access to interviews and people that not everyone has. We take that seriously. So if we do feel like we're getting a spin, then we can challenge it. I love it when people tell me, I was just thinking about that question that you asked. I'm glad you asked that question. That's like the height of compliment.
I want our listeners to feel empowered to use the information that they've learned on the Dave and Dujanovic Show to help their families, to help make good decisions, help investigate other avenues to maybe protect their family's safety or protect their family's money. I'm hopeful our show leaves our listeners with a sense of empowerment so they can make the best decision possible for themselves and for their families.
Listen for Dave and Dujanovic 9 to noon on KSL News Radio.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meeks.
Delays on westbound I-80 in 2 spots. In Summit County, it goes from Kimball Junction to Jeremy Ranch. And in the Valley, it's westbound I-80 between I-215's West Belt and Bangerter Highway. Box Elder County has gone to the birds. Spring migration is here at Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge. See what visitors are chirping about with Box Elder County. For info, activities, and more, visit boxeldercounty.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Scattered showers this afternoon with drier and warmer weather through the rest of the week. Highs rise into the 70s by the weekend. And right now, 50 degrees, mostly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson.
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As we continue to cover what has been happening on college campuses across the country, of course, the protests around Gaza and Israel, the contentious debates that have been happening there on campus. And while the pro-Palestinian demands are being made, there's an interesting subset to that. We always want to get past the headline and look at what's underneath. And now we want to get into some of the demands that some of these groups on campus are making and how those might be a little more selfish than selfless, and how it actually might be undermining the cause they say that they're for. Fantastic piece in the Washington Post. Alyssa Rosenberg, opinion columnist at the Post, talked about this idea of amnesty is the one demand campus protesters should drop. And Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start obviously with just kind of the baseline. Depending on the particular university or the particular group, the demands are a little bit different, but they all seem to have at least one component in common. Describe that for us.
So one thing that you'll see commonly on the list of demands that have been issued by student protesters are sort of amnesty from campus disciplinary proceedings. And of course, this has, the calls for amnesty have gotten sort of mixed up in part because university presidents at places like Columbia University have started calling in outside police forces to remove student encampments, in some cases to arrest protesters. And so students are facing a mix of, in some cases, actual criminal charges around trespassing, destroying property, and they're also being subject to campus disciplinary proceedings. And, I think it's important to acknowledge that campus disciplinary proceedings can be really opaque and confusing.
Right.
And a lot of people think they're unfair and think they're unfair sort of across the political spectrum, right? This has been an ongoing part of the debate over how schools should handle sexual assault allegations among students that maybe aren't being pursued through the criminal justice system. And we've had a couple of successive presidential administrations back and forth what the standards for those proceedings should be. For example, students at public schools and private schools may have very different rights in disciplinary proceedings. So it's a system that is, opaque, confusing, in some cases arguably unfair. But what I'm trying to argue is that if, students have decided that the most effective way for them to protest is to break the rules, is to be disruptive, then part of that is accepting the consequences that come with breaking those rules.
Yeah, and I think that is such a crucial part of this conversation, and I love when someone can come with an authentic experience. And you described it so beautifully in your piece in the Post, and I want you to walk our listeners through this because you've got some street cred when it comes to saying I'm going to protest and I'm going to take the consequences that go with it.
So when I was an undergrad in college, a lot of colleges and universities were starting to assess their financial aid policies and to sort of raise the thresholds at which students and their parents wouldn't have to contribute to a college education. And, this was almost 20 years ago at this point. I'm showing my age a little bit, but college was very expensive then, has gotten more expensive now. And my college was sort of slow to match the moves that some other comparable schools were making. I and some other students had been, agitating for financial aid reform on campus. We didn't feel like we were getting anywhere. And so a group of us decided to sit in and disrupt business at the admissions office. And I mean, I want to be clear, it's like the world's most polite, well-behaved occupation. I think we all made the deliberate decision to wear the clothes that we were wearing for like internship interviews and things. I had this just horrible pair of gray slacks and sweater. We brought our homework. So we're sitting in like with our textbooks open, doing the reading with our highlighters. The university cut off the internet at one point, so we couldn't keep blogging. This was before Twitter. We couldn't keep blogging about what we were doing inside. But, we knew going in that we were going to break the rules. We were probably going to be arrested. And, the people who decided to go into the building did that because we were the ones in this group who were sort of most capable of absorbing the consequences, My parents protested the Vietnam War and were disruptive at their own high school graduations. So I didn't think they would be delighted with me if I got kicked out of school, but I had really loving, supportive, wonderful parents who were obviously going to take me in if I was suspended or expelled. I didn't have to worry about losing a job that I was dependent on financially if I missed a day of work. I had friends who were in college on, student visas, green cards, and, were more vulnerable because of their immigration status. And so we sort of sorted through who felt comfortable taking those consequences.
Yeah.
And
keep going.
Yeah. And I don't want to pretend that it's not scary to be arrested even under the most genteel, polite circumstances, or, when you've been a total goody two-shoes your entire life, which I am totally guilty of being, that when, the dean of student life shows up and opens up the undergrad rule book and starts reading it at you, that it's upsetting. It's, it's scary. But also we won, and it was worth it.
Yeah.
And, I don't intend to be flip about this at all. But the whole point of breaking the rules and provoking an overreaction from your administration is to say, look, these school administrators would rather arrest these kids than make it more affordable for poor kids to go here. Yeah. These school administrators would rather call in the NYPD than, do what the student group is asking. And conversely, I don't think you can say, what's happening in Gaza is, murderous and unacceptable, but only so long as I'm not going to get a warning letter in my file if I do it. Yeah. And, there is a history on campus protests of once you introduce sort of amnesty and the disciplinary proceedings into the mix, of that coming to sort of dominate the conversation. And I think we see a little bit of this now, right? Yeah. I mean, how much of the conversation about protests on campus is now about what students are doing, what administrators are doing, as opposed to, as opposed to the issue, as opposed to the extent to which universities have an influence here, right? We're not debating whether, colleges should cut off study abroad programs or exchanges with Israeli universities, which I personally think is, awful and not something that is a useful demand, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about disciplinary proceedings and protests. Oh. And you actually see this. I mean, Roger Kahn, who's most famous for The Boys of Summer, lived near Morningside Heights, lived near Columbia when the protests were happening there in 1968, and wrote a book about it. It's called The Battle for Morningside Heights. It's not as famous. It's hard to track down used. But he points out that Students for a Democratic Society got so whipped up over the question of whether their leadership would be disciplined that at one point they issued this list of demands that left off all the main issues about a gym that Columbia was building on public land in Morningside Heights that was supposed to be the main rationale for the protest.
It is such a fascinating thing, and I think you framed it exactly right, that we're more debating, whether they'll be punished or whether it will go in their file or whether the university should also be delivering pizza and water as a humanitarian aid to the protesters. We're so far afield from what the issue is, and so recognizing the absolute predictability of consequences, which I think is what you did, and I think you even paid a $92 fine back there in 2005 because you knew the consequences. This is a great piece. I encourage everyone to go check this out at thewashingtonpost.com. And Alyssa, thanks so much for joining us today. This is a great piece, and this is important because it changes the way we look at these issues. And can we stay and keep the issues, or do we have the self-interest that ends up distracting from the conversation we're supposed to be having? Alyssa, thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Again, great piece in the Washington Post. And if you're going to protest, there will be consequences. Absolute predictability of consequences. And if part of your demands in your protest is that you don't have any consequences, you've missed the point, and you're not making the point that you hope is the real issue of the day. We'll step aside for one last break. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around.
There's a lot to celebrate this month. Graduations, the end of the school year approaching, barbecues, and warm weather months ahead. Celebrate in a clean home by calling the cleaning pros at ZeroRez. Take advantage of ZeroRez's flash sale today. $25 per room with a 4-room minimum. You know ZeroRez as the zero residue carpet cleaners that don't leave behind any dirt-attracting soaps and chemicals that other carpet cleaners use. Don't risk it with the other guys or go DIY with your carpet cleaning. It will end up soaked for days and actually do more damage than good. Keep the mud outside and not under your carpets. Just check out the 3,300 raving customer reviews online with a 4.8 Google rating. Schedule today and get one room ZeroRezified, starting at just $25 with a 4-room minimum. Make sure to mention KSL. Book with ease at ZeroRez.com or call 801-288-9376. ZeroRez. Spell it backward or forward. It's the right way to clean. ZeroRez.
Join Tim and Amanda this Friday from 1 to 4 at the new Bedrock Court Showroom in Park City at 2760 Rasmussen Road. Come see all the beautiful options in Park City.
Held over due to popular demand. This is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is your opportunity to save up to 40 to 80% on a hot tub or swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates. This weekend only, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit HotTubAndSwimSpaSale.com.
Hey everyone, it's Ted from Consumer Cellular, the guy in the orange sweater, and this is your wake-up call. If you're paying too much for wireless service, you don't have to keep having that nightmare. Consumer Cellular has the same fast, reliable coverage as the leading carriers for less. And for a limited time, new customers receive their second month free when they sign up and use promo code MONTHFREE by May 31st. So why keep spending more than you have to? Seriously, wake up and call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com.
Taxes, fees, and other third-party charges will apply. See website for additional details.
Want to keep your gas-powered engines running like new? Stable's proprietary formulas are proven by third-party testing to outperform the competition in keeping fuel fresh, preventing corrosion, and cleaning the entire fuel system. With Stable, you can have confidence you are doing the right thing for your engine's long-term health. Just pour into your gas can or fuel tank, then top off with fresh fuel. At every fill-up or when you store, start with Stable. Available where fuel additives are sold.
In real estate, it's all about the amenities. I should know. I'm an agent.
At Hyundai, all of our models offer first-class features, like Android Auto, an available Bose premium audio system, heated front and rear seats, and wireless device charging.
It's like an upscale home on wheels in here.
It's your journey. Own every mile.
Right now, lease the Hyundai Tucson for $229 a month or get up to $2,000 retail bonus cash. See your Utah Hyundai dealer. Offers end 6/3/24. Call 480-500-7931 for details.
A fiduciary has the regulatory obligation to put your best interest first. Trajan Wealth is a financial fiduciary for your investments. With Trajan Wealth, the more you make, the more we make. Our interests are aligned. Most other financial advisors are brokers held to a lesser standard and are paid an upfront commission to sell you something. Call Trajan Wealth
801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Plan your special evening out in one of Salt Lake's most unique dining experiences. 5 Alls in Foothill. 5 courses, 5-star service and dining. 5alls.com. 5alls.com.
You know, I get it. There's a lot to consider when you're dealing with joint pain, and yet you reach a point where something has to be done because it's preventing you from doing the things you love. You want to avoid surgery because you know there's recovery and downtime. You want to stay away from drugs, but you think, what are the options? Well, listen, the future of medicine is here in the Valley at QC Kinetics. QC is the nation's leader in the most exciting revolution in pain management you've seen in decades. It's regenerative medicine. So if you have achy joints, they want you to know that our bodies were created to heal themselves, but those natural biologics need to be concentrated and sent directly to the area where you are feeling the pain. That's what QC Kinetics is all about. Relief without surgery or downtime. Do this. Call QC Kinetics today and ask about a free consultation. And to learn more, call 385-766-1987. That's QC Kinetics, 385-766-1987. Do it today, 385-766-1987.
You know, Deb, you and I have had this conversation so many times. We think, I wish I had a little more light here or maybe a ceiling fan there.
That's why we love Master Electrical. So anytime we have an electrical problem, we know we can call them and they will give us their upfront pricing guarantee.
Because we're not going to do it yourself. We're going to leave it to the professionals. And this upfront pricing guarantee is fantastic. I'm sure you've been bitten by bids in the past where they say, that's going to take half a day. And then 2 weeks later, the bid and the invoice have nothing to do with each other.
Not only will you get their upfront pricing guarantee, but you'll never see an upcharge. Their pricing system simply won't allow it.
Master Electrical proudly serves from Logan to Santaquin.
They do everything that has to do with electrical, and they're always open, including for emergency services. The phone number to call is 801-543-2222.
801-543-2222, or check them out online at masterelectrical.com.
With Soda Weight Loss, it's fun, easy, and exciting to knock out big fat loss numbers week after week. I let go of 70 pounds in 5 months, and I was feeling pretty impressed with myself. Then I heard from Chuck.
I let go of about 120 pounds in about 1 year.
Being overweight comes with a whole laundry list of side effects, and none of them are good.
There was times like putting on socks and shoes, you'd be a little winded bending down.
But now?
When people see me, they're just shocked. You know, they always ask you, like, what'd you do?
What makes Soda so effective is you have your own personal nutritionist to help you. You're trying to navigate the grocery store or figure out a menu? They're just a text away with real solutions to help you stay on track so you can let go of the weight at home, at work, or wherever you are. That accountability to another person makes all the difference.
These guys, I don't think I would have done it on my own if I didn't have their support.
So go to sodaweightloss.com. That's SOTA weightloss.com and find out for yourself. Soda is, say it with me, state of the art.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, all the rain and snow we've had has raised the risk for mudslides on the Wasatch Front. Second, a black resident of Sandy got video of somebody shouting a racist slur as they drove by his home. And third, a pier meant to allow ships to deliver aid to Gaza being moved into place now on the Mediterranean coast. Right now, 50 degrees, mostly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It is great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and as we round out the program today, we've talked a lot about, off the top of the show, about Holocaust remembrance. President Biden delivered one of his better speeches. This is the forum and the format where he does exceptionally well, and he did do well today in delivering an important message against anti-Semitism, for the need for all of us to come together in a little different way. We also heard from the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and I think it's always a good day when you have the Speaker of the House, regardless of political party, and the President, regardless of political party, coming together to do something that matters. And I think remembering the Holocaust and those that died there, those that suffered immensely there, and the few survivors as that number continues to dwindle, it puts in jeopardy our memory. And as we talked with Rabbi Hirschfield, who was in Jerusalem today, he joined us late in the evening there, Jerusalem time, to talk about how we remember and what we remember, that matters. And ultimately, these conversations have to lead us somewhere forward. I loved how Rabbi Hirschfield framed it, that all of us, regardless of what issue we're concerned about, whether that's a political battle, whether it's a policy battle, whether it's something in our communities, or whether it's something in our own home and neighborhood, we get so comfortable with us and them, and the us is right and righteous and noble, and the them is wrong and evil and bad and ill-intentioned to boot. And Rabbi Hirschfield invited us to do two things. First, for the us, who we always think is right, to just step back a little bit and just think maybe we're not as good as we think, or maybe we're not living up to the highest of ideals that we profess to believe. And when we think about them, those people who are on the other side of whatever the issue is, we should probably think of them in terms of being maybe a little better than we supposed, maybe a little bit more noble, maybe a little more principled, maybe a little more committed. And once we get to that space, then everything changes. I love the fact that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would always speak about this need to create the beloved community and that interconnectedness of our lives. And I think in light of everything going on, not just around the planet, not just on college campuses, but right here at home, I think it's a good time for us to step back and reflect on what that means and how people of every race and religion and nation, that we could live together, that we should live together in peace and harmony, that we should work together in progress of humankind. Because in the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness would not be tolerated because the standards of human decency won't allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, prejudice would be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. Now, Dr. King did not invent the term, the beloved community. He learned about it from the philosopher Josiah Royce. Dr. King expanded the theme and with his extraordinary vision of what was possible, that many races, political, business, community leaders have shared versions of Dr. King's vision for so many decades now. But in order to actually do that, we have to get back to something that I think is increasingly a lost art in our society, the lost art of listening. I think we have to re-enthrone listening as a vital virtue in our society. Because if we don't do that, it's impossible to change the dynamic of our conversations. Because once I decide I'm right and you're wrong, and you're not just wrong, you're wrong and evil, I stop listening. I also stop being curious. I stop asking questions. And then it doesn't become necessary to listen, because now in my mind and my little social media bubble that I've created for myself, there's no hope for you. And that's where contempt begins. I loved how the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, talked about Germany at the turn of the century, how advanced they were, how focused on being a democratic society they were, how innovative they were, how powerful and elevating their institutions of higher education were. And how even with all of that, it unraveled to the point that the Holocaust did happen. They stopped listening. They started othering. They stopped being curious about someone who looked different, lived different, believed different than they did.